On the evening of September 9th, 1980, a massive cargo ship pushes through the Pacific bound for Japan. Approaching from the east is Typhoon Orchid, a powerful storm growing more violent by the hour. For 8 weeks, the MV Derbyshire had sailed all the way from the vast iron mines of Canada, her holds packed with 150,000 tons of ore. She had crossed the Atlantic, skirted Africa's southernmost tip, and carved her way through the vast Indian Ocean. After 8 weeks out at sea, the ship's crew of 42 seasoned seafarers, engineers, and deckhands are looking forward to wrapping up the final leg of their long voyage. The Derbyshire's captain, 47-year-old Geoffrey Underhill, is a trusted British mariner with over 2 decades of experience. He too is looking forward to completing the voyage. His wife has flown out from England to wait for him in Japan for a welcome reunion after months out at sea. But on the otherwise routine crossing, there is one minor concern relating to Typhoon Orchid. For days, Captain Underhill has been relying on conflicting weather reports, convinced he could outrun the storm. He's held course, trusting his ship's speed and power, but now there's no escape. The nearest safe harbor is hundreds of kilometers away, and changing course would expose the ship's broadside to the typhoon's full force. What Captain Underhill does next is standard procedure. He reduces speed and turns the ship's bow at a slight angle to the waves, a nautical maneuver used to stabilize a vessel in rough seas. Earlier, he also sent out a message to controllers thousands of kilometers away, reporting severe weather in the ship's position. But over the next few hours, the storm only intensifies. The waves swell more than 10 meters high and nearly as long as the Derbyshire herself. The massive ship climbs each peak, then slams into the troughs. Despite the heavy seas, there's no sign of distress. Captain Underhill stands firm. He knows his ship, and he's seen worse. At nearly 170,000 tons, the Derbyshire is a steel fortress stretching nearly 1,000 feet. She's longer than the Titanic and nearly twice as wide, towering 15 stories from engine room to bridge. Each of her 9 holds is the size of a 7-story building. And she's not just big, she's state-of-the-art, built to withstand some of the most brutal seas on Earth. Tonight should be no different. On board, everything is routine. The crew monitor systems, secure loose equipment, and adjust heading and engine power. They'll simply ride out the storm. But out there in the blackness, beyond the crew's notice, something unseen and unstoppable is already in motion. By dawn, the Derbyshire and everyone on board will be gone, and for nearly 2 decades, the world won't know why. The Derbyshire fell silent on September 9th, 1980. No distress call, no final message, and for 6 days, nothing happened. The ship's owner didn't even report it missing. Maybe it was confidence that the ship had simply lost radio contact and would reappear, but the days stretched on and still no word. It wasn't until September 15th that the alarm was finally raised, but by then, whatever happened was long over. An international search began, with air and sea units scouring the ship's last known coordinates, but they found nothing. No debris, no life rafts, no wreckage. Less than a week later, the search was called off. The media seized on the ship's disappearance as an oddity. Smaller ships had weathered the typhoon just fine. The Derbyshire vanished without even a distress call. The official explanation was that the sea had simply taken the ship, a conclusion drawn almost immediately, and just as quickly as the search ended, so did the news coverage. Authorities repeatedly dismissed calls to keep searching. There was nothing to be found, they insisted, nothing to investigate. But for the families left behind, it just didn't add up. The search had been too brief, the answers too convenient. It was as if something was deliberately being hidden. The Derbyshire was built only 4 years earlier at the Swan Hunter shipyard in Britain, another steel giant joining the world's ever-expanding fleet. It could transport over 150,000 tons, more than 4 times what ships could just a couple of decades earlier. And for good reason. Multinational corporations were driving record demand for raw materials and goods. The Derbyshire was a new kind of ship. The OBO, or Ore Bulk Oil Carrier, is a new class of ship that can transport a variety of goods. It meant the Derbyshire could sail from the Middle East to Australia loaded with oil, and then make the return trip carrying iron ore. There's no ballast time, no empty returns. A well-operated OBO keeps moving and keeps earning, generating 20 to 30% higher revenues. The Derbyshire was just one of 6 ships in a series of OBO carriers known as the Bridge class, ordered by Britain's leading shipping firms and built by one of the country's top shipbuilders. There was a lot riding on the design. By the 1970s, Britain's shipbuilding dominance was starting to slip. Japan and South Korea were building ships faster, cheaper, and more efficiently. Swan Unter, once a titan of the industry, struggled to stay competitive, facing mounting pressure to cut costs. So whatever ended up dooming the Derbyshire might have been there from the very start. Peter Ridyard lost his son aboard the Derbyshire. Like other family members, he was desperate for answers. But Ridyard wasn't just a grieving father, he was an expert, a seasoned ship surveyor who knew the industry. And when he started digging around, he made a shocking discovery. In 1982, just 18 months after the Derbyshire vanished, another Bridge-class ship was caught in a violent storm. As the crew battled the raging North Sea, something terrifying happened. Massive cracks began appearing just forward of the superstructure. The captain, fearing his ship would break apart, ordered an evacuation, airlifting the crew to safety. Digging deeper, Ridyard learned that what happened wasn't an isolated incident. Every Bridge-class ship had developed stress cracks, all in the exact same area, and one by one they were quietly being brought into port for repairs. Then Ridyard uncovered something even more alarming. The ships hadn't been built according to their original plans, with several last-minute modifications having been made at the shipyard. Ridyard suspected shoddy workmanship and what he believed to be a flaw in the ship's design. Determined to expose the truth, he sent his findings to the Department of Transportation, but he got nowhere. Officials refused to listen, but the families refused to be ignored. In 1984, they formed the Derbyshire Families Association. In November 1986, yet another Bridge-class ship was caught in distress. The Coulong Bridge had broken up in shallow waters off the coast of Ireland. Now, with her destruction unfolding in full view, the British government could no longer ignore the suspicions. An official inquiry was finally opened. For 6 months, experts and lawyers paraded their theories, but all along something was off. Peter Ridyard was never allowed to present his research. Despite a mountain of evidence, his concerns were barely acknowledged. In January 1989, the official findings were published. No evidence of structural failure. The Derbyshire was just another ship lost to the sea. In 1994, the family's persistence finally paid off. The International Transport Workers Federation decided enough was enough. In May 1994, a team of investigators traveled to the remote waters where the Derbyshire was last heard from. They found the ship in just 23 hours, nearly 4 kilometers down, resting silently on the ocean floor. It would take another 6 years to fully piece together the puzzle, and the haunting images made one thing unmistakably clear. Everyone was wrong about what really happened. On the evening of September 9, 1980, the Derbyshire was already beginning to lose the battle. At the very front of the ship, waves hammered the foredeck, tearing away ventilation covers. Below, a space called the boatswain's store gradually filled with water. The added weight pulled the bow deeper into the storm, allowing even more waves to crash over the deck. Ventilator tops were torn away, exposing machinery rooms in the forepeak ballast tank. These too began to flood. On the bridge, the difference was imperceptible, but the Derbyshire was struggling. Massive crests now slammed into the forward deck, and the number 1 hold hatch cover gave way under the crushing force. Thousands of tons of seawater exploded into the cargo hold. The bow lurched even lower. The number 2 hatch cover was next, then number 3. The remaining hatch covers imploded, setting off a domino effect. Below the surface, the pressure collapsed air pockets and tanks, tearing the vessel apart from within. The families had been wrong about what doomed the Derbyshire. It wasn't a structural failure, but a series of small, compounding breakdowns. But that didn't matter. What did was their refusal from the very beginning to accept the official explanation. Through their years of persistence, the families forced an industry to change. Ship designs improved, rules got tougher, and inspections got tougher. In the end, they didn't just find a ship, they changed the course of maritime history.